Hello there. Today I've got a Syrah to taste. This is Church Road's single vineyard Syrah 2021. So we're in Hawke's Bay on the east coast of New Zealand's North Island, a relatively warm region suited to producing full-bodied whites and rich, well-structured reds. Church Road as a winery is significant in the history of the development of the Hawke's Bay wine region. It was started in 1897 by somebody called Bartholomew Steinmetz, and he named the winery Taradale. In 1921, a 14-year-old called Tom McDonald joined the workforce at Taradale, and it was here that he continued working right up until the late 80s when he passed away, always involved in winemaking here. And Tom very quickly moved up the ranks to run the winery. At one stage he owned the winery but was unable to keep control of it, and for a long period he was the manager and director running the winery for the McWilliams family, an Australian winemaking family who at that stage owned Church Road. Today the winery is owned by Pernod Ricard, the French winemaking group, and it's they I should thank for supplying this bottle for me to taste. That's much appreciated. Strangely, Church Road isn't as well distributed outside New Zealand as its regional significance would suggest it should be. I believe this is something that Pernod Ricard are working to address, but it's quite a significant brand on the New Zealand market, but seen slightly less outside New Zealand. The single vineyard wines sit towards the top of the quality hierarchy within Church Road's wines, sitting just below the wines that are bottled and marketed as the Tom McDonald range. The fruit from this wine comes from the Redstone Vineyard, and the Redstone Vineyard is a plot within one of Hawke's Bay's premium sub-regions, the Bridge-Par Triangle. An area of deep, friable, grey wacky stone and gravel has been laid down over years, and this has been infilled with some windblown loess, some red volcanic ash, and as a result the name Redstone. Redstone itself refers to a plot which is actually one of the warmest parts of Bridge-Par. This is because there's a hill, Roy's Hill, that blocks cool air that comes down from the nearby hills and just allows Redstone to be that couple of degrees warmer than the plots either side of it, due to that shelter. The soils within Bridge-Par also tend to have slightly more clay in them than the other well-known area of stone and gravel within Hawke's Bay, the Gimlet Gravels. And as a result, the wines from Bridge-Par tend to be that little bit rounder, richer, plusher and less angular than the Gimlet Gravels wines. 2021 was a vintage with settled, warm, dry weather. In fact, during the second half of the summer, drought conditions were experienced. The weather was slightly cooler than the preceding 2020 vintage, and the resulting wines are concentrated but have retained really quite good aromatics. This wine is made exactly the same way as the Tom McDonald range wines are made. It's simply that at the blending stage, the best lots of Syrah are selected to go into the Tom McDonald wine, and lots that winemaker Chris Scott judges as typical of the terroir style for Redstone are put into this blend. So the fruit arriving at the winery is sorted carefully on mechanical tables, largely to eliminate any green matter. A portion of the fruit, about 9%, is left as whole bunches, which extends the fermentation, adds a certain softness to the extraction there. During fermentation, the ferment's allowed to go up to 34 degrees, which is relatively high for fermentation. Much higher than that and you'll start shocking the yeasts and stopping the fermentation. So the idea of allowing fermentation to go up to that extent is for good colour extraction and to extract ripe tannins. The temperature at which you're extracting helps select those tannins. After fermentation, there's a period of prolonged maceration to ensure that the skins have stayed with the juice and the wine for 2 to 3 weeks. During this period, there's also regular aeration, and that's to help fix the colour and to allow the aromas to open out. The wine is filled into French oak barrels and is allowed to complete its malolactic conversion in those barrels. Aging goes on for 17 months, so quite a long period in oak, with the first 6 months of that with the lees from the fermentation remaining in the wine, just to ensure it extracts richness from those lees. After 17 months, the wine is bottled without any fining or filtration. They don't want to interfere with the flavours that they have in the wine there. So let's have a look at it and see what we make of it. My initial view on the colour is that it's deep, it's dark, not quite opaque. That's a purple red. It's not quite a bluish purple, but it's certainly heading towards that. There's quite a purple rim to a sort of a deep, darker red core. Swirling the wine, it's not actually particularly throwing heavy tears. There are some there. It's 13.5% alcohol, so that's about what's to be expected. The aromas certainly have a very savoury edge to them. There's a slightly meaty, slightly spicy note. I guess there's an earthiness as well. There's a hint at dark, black, sort of blackcurrant pastel sort of fruit there. But in general, it's much more sort of earthy and spicy with meaty notes. The fruit's just a little restrained and in on itself. So let's taste it and see what we make of that. On the palate, lovely fresh acidity is lifting red fruit aromatics, and you've got sort of almost a plummy core, but then also floral notes, peony, that sort of note in that. But overlaying that and very well integrated with it, there is a real spiciness. There are notes here that I suspect may denote a tiny amount of a yeast flavouring called Brettanomyces. And it's that sort of slightly savoury, almost Vegemite note that it's giving to the wine. There is a peppery note as well, which is very typical of Syrah, but perhaps part of that savouriness is a sort of an almost sort of bacon rind note. I was talking about meatiness, and yes, there's that quite juicy meatiness there before you get to the pepperiness. The flavours are intense, they're structured, there's quite a grip. In fact, on the mid-palate, there's almost a sort of a drying astringency, but there's enough weight of fruit around it that doesn't really become objectionable. In fact, I think it adds a dimension in terms of the grip that it's giving the wine. The wine's 13.5% alcohol, doesn't seem particularly overly generous. It's adding a little bit of roundness. There does actually seem to be a little bit of richness, a sort of a smooth, almost glycerol note across the back palate, as the flavours are lasting quite well. And there's a sort of a longer, ripe, bitter cherry finish. Again, overlaid with touches of peppery spice and that slight sort of savoury bacon fat note as well. So the acidity is giving the wine some quite nice length. The alcohol is well in balance. And there's a really good fruit intensity. In fact, this is quite a young wine. At the moment, it's a little bit impenetrable. The fact that you can see the lovely concentrated red fruit and touches of spice suggests the concentration to age, and the acidity the wine has gives it a lovely balance, which again the alcohol follows through on. This is quite a classically styled Syrah, so not like an Australian Shiraz or anything like that. It's 13.5% alcohol is stopping it from being too warm and rich and too ripe. Yeah, quite a refined, slightly meaty, slightly spicy style, perhaps best broached in about 4 or 5 years. So I hope you found this interesting. Thank you very much for joining us. I do hope you'll join us again for another tasting really soon. If you've enjoyed watching the video, do please hit the like button. Do share it with your friends if you think they'd be interested to see it as well. Leave your comments. We'd love to hear what you think either about this wine, about Hawke's Bay wines, about Syrahs from Hawke's Bay, New Zealand Syrahs, or the videos we're making. That would be fabulous to get your feedback. So thank you very much again, and I hope we'll see you sometime really soon. Bye now.